Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Devin Sears. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Chris Miles, and we are talking today about choosing and customizing your first WordPress theme. A lot of people, when they first build a WordPress site, they can get a little bit intimidated or have a little bit of decision paralysis as they're looking through all the different themes that are available out there and choosing which is the right one to fit their website and how to customize it. So before we get too deep into that, let's talk about who we are. My name is Devin Sears, and I am the Senior Field Marketing Manager with Bluehost, joined by Chris Miles. He is the Senior Product Manager, so he works on building various different products around Bluehost, specifically as they focus on WordPress and everything that goes with that. He is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm thrilled to have him on with us today. But before we go too deep into all the content, I have a couple housekeeping items I'd like to cover first. First, audio. If you can hear us, find the chat box and let us know where you're tuning in from. The chat box can be used throughout the entire presentation for you to communicate with us and with other people that are also attending. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat box, but we prefer that you put them in the Q&A box, which is right next to the chat box. If you do put a question in the chat, if it's a simple question, we'll answer it there. If it could benefit from having a threaded answer, so a little bit of a back and forth, we'll move that over to the Q&A section so that it's not lost in all the other chats that will take place. If you need help or if you're having any technical difficulties, go ahead and drop that in the chat. Let us know, or you can try refreshing the screen. That fixes 90% of the issues. And if that doesn't fix it, then let me know in the chat and I'll do everything I can to assist you and get you back online. The first question that I will answer, which always happens, is will we be sending out a recording of this? And the answer is yes. We will be sending out a recording. So if you have to leave at any time, we appreciate you stopping by. We're sorry to see you go, but we will be sending out a recording to everyone that registered. So on to what we'll be covering today. We're talking about WordPress themes. So chapter one, we want to make sure that everyone understands what a WordPress theme is, how it affects your website, how to kind of use it to your advantage to make sure that you're choosing the right theme. And it's a theme that you're going to be happy with for a while. Which brings us to chapter two, which are the factors to consider when choosing a theme. Different things that you should be looking at to make the right decision. The theme, as we'll talk about, is often kind of the makeup of the website. So we want to make sure that it's looking great and that you're happy with it. Chapter three, we're going to explore theme customizations, the different things that you can do to customize the theme to make it a reflection of your website, a reflection of you, your business, whatever it is that you're working on. We want to make sure that you're familiar with how to make those customizations. And then chapter four, we're pretty excited about this. We're going to talk a little bit about WonderSuite, which is an easier way to get your site up and running in a way that is going to look amazing and it's going to be very, very simple. And then we're going to finish with best practices for theme customizations, regardless of which path you choose or which theme you select. We want to talk about best practices all around. And then we will end with a Q&A. I am going to be off screen responding to chat questions that are coming in. So please drop those as we go through. And any questions that I don't know the answer to or that I think might be beneficial to the rest of the audience, we will be holding till the end and we'll be asking in the Q&A. So without further ado, Chris, the time is yours. Please take it away.
Great. All right, so let's get started. Thanks for that introduction, Devin. We've got a lot to cover, but this is going to be fun. So starting with understanding WordPress themes. First, let's just talk about what is a theme. And this will be quick for those that are not familiar with this. But inside WordPress, here I have kind of a demo website. I'm going to pull in and just talk about what I mean, because WordPress can be complicated and there's different pieces to it. So if I go over here to Appearance in WP Admin, so this is the admin section of WordPress where the site owner can work on it versus like the front of the website where people can look at things and like where site visitors will see. So if I'm logged into WP Admin, here the back end of the site, I can go over here to appearance. And you'll notice there's different sections in here like appearance versus plugins. So if I go over here to appearance, that's where we can pick themes and where you can change the way something looks. So if I activate a different theme and then go back to my site, here, now it's got a different look to it. I'll go ahead and change that back. So themes versus plugins. So the plugins are what give you functionality. So things like, oh, I need a store. So that's WooCommerce. Or the Bluehost plugin, which comes with some really cool stuff that I'll be showing you in a minute. Or Jetpack, which comes with some functionality and things like that. So plugins are things that your website can do. It's usually functionality. Whereas themes change the way things look. There's a little bit of overlap when we get to talking about blocks, but we'll cover that in a minute. So that's just a brief introduction to what is a theme. It's just the part of your site that controls mostly how it looks, things like colors and fonts and things like that. So there's different types of themes. Some are free, some you have to pay for. And so there's different choices that you have there. If you're a Bluehost customer, we do have a premium theme marketplace for people who are looking for that. Most of the time, you should be able to find what you need with a free theme, although sometimes paid themes will get you really far really quickly, but most of the time, what you can find is going to be just as good with a free theme if what you look at is, we'll talk about ways to kind of evaluate different themes against each other and see, how to pick out a theme that's going to do a good job for your site and work really well. So you don't have to spend money on a theme to get something that looks really nice, but you certainly can. There's also block themes versus classic themes. This is where I'm going to have much stronger opinions on things and say that, this is a webinar we're doing in 2024, but it's been true for a little while now that block themes really are the future of WordPress. So when we're thinking about like where WordPress is going and what matters to make sure that your site is going to function well into the future, it's probably pretty important that you adopt a block theme. So what does that mean? That's just the WordPress went through a change a couple versions ago in version 5.0. We're well into version 6 now, but back in version 5.0, we changed to use the block editor. Sometimes it's called Gutenberg, which means that themes now need to declare some compatibility with that block editor to use some of the cool functionality within it. And the advantages of block themes is it helps keep the functionality of the site and the kind of look and feel of the site separate. It's compatible with the block editor, so you're going to have a much better editing experience. And there's a lot of really, really nice site editing capabilities that are now just built into WordPress. You get them by default, but these things are really only going to work if you've got a theme that works with blocks. So it's important that you do have a block theme. Now, if you already have a site and it's running a theme that hasn't yet adopted the block editor and it says the classic theme, that's okay for now. But if you're starting a site from scratch, you might as well get a block theme. You're going to have a better experience. Let's talk about how to install a theme. So this is pretty straightforward. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to Appearance in WP Admin, and then I can just browse themes from here. Now, this isn't the only place you can get themes. You can also search on WordPress.org. There's also third-party marketplaces you can do. But personally, I pretty much get every one of my themes from WordPress.org. It's got a lot of the things that I use to determine whether or not a theme is good. And we're going to talk in the next section about factors to consider when you're choosing a theme. But it's really easy. So all you really have to do is you can browse. So I can click over here and say block themes and browse for, hey, what do I want my site to look like? It might not immediately look like the demo, um, but it's the idea with these previews is it gives you a sense of what your site can look like when using this theme. Um, and so, yeah, you can look through, hey, here's some recently uploaded ones. If you're on WordPress.org and you're logged in, you can actually favorite themes. And then you can go in here to like favorites and type in your username. And in WP admin, pull up, hey, here are some of my favorite themes and things like that, which is kind of fun. Um, but yeah, you can press through the popular ones. If you're at Bluehost creating a new site, you'll probably get Yith Wonder, which is a theme that we add. It's a really nice one. It works really well with e-commerce sites and some of the stuff that we add. It's a really nice theme. But there's a lot of really great themes out there that you can get. So to install a theme, you can either download it from WordPress.org and then upload it here, or if you find it easier, you can just click the install button if you're browsing for themes here inside WP Admin. So I can just click install, and there it is, it's installed. And then I click activate to actually start using that theme. And so I can, now I have I've got a new theme in here that I can use if I want. And it's as simple as that. You can just go over to where the WordPress.org themes are and click install, and it'll install it straight from WordPress.org. Continuing on, here's what you should be thinking about when choosing a theme. So there's a couple of things. Make sure it's up to date. So if you're on WordPress.org, or if you're, this is also browsing WordPress.org just inside WP Admin, you can look at when was it last updated. Was it a theme that was updated, somewhat recently? Hopefully it was, and let's see, this one was updated very recently. But if it's years old and and it isn't, isn't compatible with the current version of WordPress, and probably it's not a great theme to be using. Another thing you can look at is the number of installs. How popular is this site? Sometimes people are concerned about using a theme that is really common because they want their site to look unique. That is true, and it's just something to consider. But there's also sort of safety in numbers that if you're using a really popular theme, like one of the default ones that are by WordPress.org, like 2024 and things like that, these themes are really popular and have a lot of support. They have a lot of ongoing development on them, and so you can be confident that this is something that's well maintained. And another thing that's really nice, we'll talk more about it later, is there's more than one style variation. So just because you're using the same theme as somebody else doesn't necessarily mean your site is going to look exactly the same. But back to the list of what to consider. We've got make sure it's up to date. And by up to date, it's also good to think about what version of WordPress is it compatible with. And if you're not sure what the latest version of WordPress is, you can just go to wordpress.org/download, and you can check. And you can say, okay, WordPress 6.5.2 is currently the latest version as of this webinar. And this is compatible with 6.4 or higher, so we should be good. Quality of support. So this may matter more or less to what you need, but one thing that you might end up with is you might need some support on a theme. You might have questions, you might need help. And if that's the case, you may want to click into a theme on WordPress.org and say, view the support forum. There's a forum by default for every theme uploaded to WordPress.org. And you can just click over here on support, and you can just click through it and just see, like, all right, what do we have here? What are the sorts of questions that people are asking? What are the, are people generally getting answers? And there's, these are people helping each other. You've got some users helping other users. You've got the developers of the theme sometimes stepping in and answering questions too. But it's good to step in here and just see, is this the sort of thing that if I do need help, I'm likely to get some help on? Maybe that doesn't matter depending on your situation, but for some people, that's really important. So it's just something to consider. Compatibility, which is something we just talked about. So there's compatibility with the version of WordPress you're using, but it's also, you might want to think about compatibility with certain plugins. For example, let's say you're running a store. Well, then you're going to probably want to be using WooCommerce. And so you'll want to be thinking, is this a theme that works with WooCommerce? Probably it is. Most themes do. But depending on what you have, maybe you've got a very specific niche plugin for the very specific type of site that you have, and you want to make sure it works. The great thing about getting themes from WordPress.org is that they don't cost extra money. And so if you want to test it out, you can just try it out. I can just go over here and click install, try it out, and see if the plugin works. And if the plugin seems to work with my theme, then terrific. I'm in a good spot. But it's just something to consider, that not every theme is necessarily going to be compatible with every plugin necessarily. So something to consider. Demo content. So this is something where sometimes premium themes, at least in the past, historically, have kind of had the upper hand. That's starting to change now, and I'll talk about why. But in the past, that was one of the main reasons people might want to get a premium theme, is it's often trivially easy to look at some of the demo content of a premium theme and within minutes have something that looks exactly like the demo. And in the past, that was something that was pretty challenging to do with a free theme, that you might get, I'm not super familiar with this theme. I'm just using it as an example, but just because I've activated it here, there we go. So in this case, looks exactly like the demo. But other ones, maybe that's not necessarily the case. So it's something to consider, is how much work is it going to be to get it to look like the demo? Am I going to have to add a bunch of stuff? Or maybe that doesn't matter as much. But a lot of times with newer block themes, there's ways to make your site look just like the demo because of these neat things built into the block editor that allow you to publish within a theme information about how everything works and all of these patterns and things like this. All of this can be published in a theme, and so you can change things and just download it from WordPress.org, and then here's this beautiful thing that's just right away ready to go for you. So it's something to consider. Is there demo content available, and do you like it? Does it do what you need? In just a couple of minutes, are you able to have something 80-90% close to what you need? Because that's one of the things you might want in a theme. Sometimes that's not what you want in a theme. Sometimes people prefer something where, just give me some more of a blank canvas where I can just start coding and start writing things myself and start doing things. And so some people would prefer something a little bit more like this, where it's very minimal, very sparse. I've just got, what's here, and then I have to kind of build something from scratch. So it depends on what you're looking for. But most of the time, people prefer, no, I want it to look like this. And I clicked on it and activated it because it looked like this in the preview. So something to consider. What demo content is available and how easy is it to get to that state? Exploring theme customization options. So once you have your theme, well, then you're probably going to want to change it a little bit. You probably want to customize it a little bit, make it your own. You might want, have choices about SEO or about colors or about, different aspects of it. SEO is probably more in a plugin than a theme, but like there might be options in various areas of like, oh, well, how do you want the sidebar to work? Do you want this to work this way? And so let's talk about that a little bit. So let's go into the site editor first of all. So one of the things that's really nice about a good, I'm going to use 2024, but something that's really nice about a good block compatible theme is you can use this site editor here where it says edit site, which is really nice. So if I go into edit site, then I'm going to be able to change things about this site in a way that are really straightforward. I'm not going to use code at all in this presentation, but I can change a lot of things. And so one of the things that's really easy to start with is just see if there's style variations. And on WordPress.org, you can actually see different style variations if they're declared within the theme. And you can see like, oh, wow, there's a lot of different versions of this theme. And so when you're in the site editor, if you click on styles here under design, I can just pick one of these and I can just start clicking through and, it can change everything to, how the images show up. Like you'll notice this is the same picture, but it's showing up differently because I've got a different style variation. And so kind of like this dark mode one, that one looks pretty cool. So I'm going to use this. I guess it's called Onyx. And then I'll hit save. Cool. So styles are a really simple way to customize very quickly. And I've got all these presets and colors and things like that. So I can also get further into this. I can edit the style. And so I can go in here and start messing with the colors, right? And I can change, individual things. I can add gradients and things like that. But here are the colors that are used in the color palette. So the thing that's nice about this is if it's done at the theme level like this, then everything in the site can know to use these colors and everything can kind of match, which is really nice. But yeah, if you want to add custom CSS, which is code, a minute ago I said we weren't going to use code, so I'm not going to write any, but I'll just show you where you can add it. But if you want to add additional CSS, you can do that over here in styles. You click on the little menu and then additional CSS. You don't actually need an extra plugin for this. It's built right into core now, which is great. I keep saying core. WordPress core is what I mean, because WordPress core is like WordPress, the software itself. And then you can add functionality with plugins, and you can add kind of look and feel with themes, right? But core just means it's part of WordPress itself. So regardless of which plugins, regardless of which themes you use, if it's built into core, as long as you're on the right version, you should have it, right? So cool. Also, I can change individual aspects of this. So if I want to go and, change the way that something works, I can go in here and say, I don't actually have a subscriber list. So let me just delete this section. I don't need this, so I'm going to delete this section. And I'm going to change this to say, here's the latest news. And maybe I want to add a picture in here, or maybe I want to, there's different things you can do. But you can literally just click on stuff and start changing it. And you can upload new images. You can, change the copy and things like this. But you're changing something on, the real site. So I'll go ahead and hit save here. And if I go over here to this kind of sidebar thing, this is where I can see what I'm looking at. Because you might click on, like, if I click on this, I'll be like, okay, well, what do I have selected? And if I go through these sections, I can go over here and say, okay, this is the paragraph, here's a spacer, a passion for creating, then it's this, then it's this, then it's, okay, and you can kind of see the hierarchy of how it was built. And the header's up here, and then here's a row, and here's the sections. Okay, so if I want to change the logo, That's right here, and you can kind of step through the anatomy of it if you need to. So that's the site editor, that's style variations, custom CSS, child themes. Okay, so one of the things you may want to do is, depending on how much you want to change a theme, you may need to change the theme's code. If this doesn't sound like a thing you're going to do, then probably you don't need to worry too much about child themes. But sometimes you do want to change the theme's code, and if you do, one of the ways you can do that is with a child theme. And basically what that does is, you can imagine a parent and a child, and the child listens to the parent. And the way that it works is, if you create a child theme, which is sort of like a copy of this theme, then if you make changes to the child theme, then those changes will be used on your site, but the parent theme can update without it messing up or breaking your child theme necessarily. Because if I was just to go into the theme code itself and just start editing the code directly and say, oh, I'm just going to change this and maybe register some new things and go over here to this section and start changing things. If I started messing with the code directly, that would be fine. But the next time this theme updates, all of my changes would be erased. So one of the reasons you may want to, if you are to a point where you do want to start changing the code of your theme, that's why you might want to use a child theme, is then when updates happen to your themes, because updates will happen from time to time. This one's on version 1.1, and version 1.2 will come out sometime in the future. When those updates happen, it won't erase your code changes. So keep in mind, if all you've changed is things like the text and the arrangement and things using the site editor in here, you don't need to worry about a child theme, right? But if you're in the code and you're changing the code of your theme, that's when it's a good idea to look into a child theme. And there's plugins that will create child themes for you. There's also really good tutorials online. But just something to keep in mind, that if you get to a point where you're changing the code, look into a child theme. Okay, so this might seem like a lot of information, a lot to keep track of, a lot to remember. And it is. But one of the things that we've created here at Bluehost to kind of manage the complexity of that and to simplify it a lot is, we created WonderSuite. And what WonderSuite can do is manage a lot of this complexity so that you don't as much have to worry about it. So if some of the things I've been talking about so far sound a little bit trickier, like, hey man, I just want a site, can you just do that? What's all this stuff about a child theme and custom CSS and et cetera, et cetera? Okay, WonderStart actually can help a lot, and we can get into that. So what WonderSuite is a series of products that work really well together, including a theme, onboarding, AI help, block patterns, a whole bunch of stuff that work really well together, and with some AI technology is able to help people get started on their websites really easily and build out their websites really, really quickly. And so I'll walk through a really quick demo of some of the things that can do, and we can keep in mind, here are the things that normally you would have to do with theme customization, and we can do it maybe a little bit quicker with WonderSuite. So I'm going to go into kind of a demo site, and I'm going to go through this. So this was probably be the first screen that you'll get if you sign up for a Bluehost account after you pay and go through those steps. So I'm going to go through the setup, and we're going to ask some questions like, how much have you used WordPress? I'm going to pretend I've never used it before, even though I've used it a lot. Help us tailor this web. So this is an interesting part. This is a part where we can say what kind of site it is. And it's really nice because normally when you're looking at this, yeah, I've got these different style variations and stuff, but I've got to kind of suspend my disbelief about like, well, if I have a restaurant site, well, then this is not that relevant. And like, do I need to search for a restaurant theme? Yeah, or something? Well, you don't have to do that here. You can just say, food and beverage. And then as you continue on, you don't have to use your imagination trying to figure out like, hey, how does this work? What do I do? You can just click on. Oh well, there's secondary markets here. I can do. Let's see. I'm going to say weddings. That sounds fun. Never done a wedding site. Let's continue setup. And wedding planners Inc. or something like that. And I can step through and provide information about my store. I'm going to skip this for now. Physical products, digital downloads, customizable products. And when you answer these questions, it tells us what plugins you need and what plugins we should install. And then based on that, we can put together some different versions of a site. So here, I don't have to use my imagination. And normally you would. Normally, when you're picking a theme, you would have to use your imagination and say, okay, well, this one is some government website, something, or I don't know, project management website. I have to imagine something a little bit more for wedding planning or a bakery or whatever it is. With WonderSuite, you have less of that problem because you can just say like, oh, great, make your wedding the talk of the town. That sounds pretty cool. So, yeah, I can just pick one that I like. I'm going to pick this one. And I can customize the colors if I want, but I think this one's fine. And then I can go through, pick a different header. I can pick a home page. I like that one. And then I've got different, I kind of like this one. Yeah. And then I've got different options on what plugins based on that we think might be relevant to your site. And then based on that, we can spin up a whole website just based on those things. And so as I go into WordPress here, here's our wedding planner website. And it's got some starter content in here, but I don't have to use as much of my imagination to see how this works. So yeah, and I can change things. I can customize it as I need to, but decent starting point. And we've actually got a newer version of this that's coming out soon that can do even more than that, which is pretty cool. So I'm gonna, yeah. So let me go back to my demo site. So the new version of this, I think, is one of our next webinars that we're doing. But yeah. So yeah, that was the live demo where I talk about what that can do. Best practices for theme customization. Okay, so there's a lot of ways to do things, and that's one of the things that's tough about WordPress is there's 100 ways to do almost anything. So it'll let you do anything you want, and that's also a downfall of WordPress, is that it'll let you do anything. And so let's talk about some of the best ways to do a few of these things. Use core when you can. So what I mean by that is sometimes WordPress will have built into it a way to do something. And that's often the better way to do it. And as WordPress gets matures and more functionality is added to WordPress, sometimes you'll see a situation where you used to need an extra plugin to do something. Like in the past, you needed a whole extra plugin to add custom CSS. And then that was no longer necessary. Um, there's other things like that. Like when it used to be that for lazy loading images, that didn't happen by default. But now Core has at least a version of image lazy loading by default. Um, embeds are another thing that work that way, where like if you have a YouTube link and you want that to play embedded in a blog post, you don't actually need a plugin for that anymore. WordPress just does that. And a bunch of other fancy stuff with the way that certain aspects of auto update work, the way that site health and health checks work. A lot of cool stuff is now built right into Core. WordPress itself don't necessarily need an extra plugin. So if you're looking for certain functionality, the first place I look is, let me see if there's a way I can do this without a plugin. Because if there is, that's probably going to be a thing that's well maintained well into the future, and it's just less I have to worry about is managing a plugin on top of Core. Use blocks when you can. So blocks are the individual components of your site. So like this button is a block, the row it's within is a block, this text is a block. These are all blocks, right? And you can add more blocks by searching for things in plugins. And there's a lot of plugins that register blocks that are really good. Another thing that comes built into every Bluehost account, if you've got the Bluehost plugin, is something called WonderBlocks. It's part of WonderSuite. And that comes with a whole bunch of really cool patterns and styles that are really good. And so all of these are extra blocks that are built in. And if you went through that kind of onboarding that I showed you before, then these they use copy that's actually relevant to the questions that you answered. So before it was a different website, it wasn't this one. When we said we were, I think, wedding planners, some of this would be relevant to that then. And so you can actually use this to add more blocks and more sections and things like that. So if possible, use blocks when you can instead of, say, short codes or a more old-fashioned way of doing things. Use the site editor. Sometimes kind of the old-fashioned way to do things was with the WordPress customizer, where you would go into customize and there were like settings. And like, yeah, you can do that and you can use that for additional CSS and you can change things there. But generally speaking, if you've got a good, well-maintained, up-to-date site, try to use the site editor to change things about your site. And then rather than changing it for an individual page, you can change kind of the construction of your site in a way that, oh, I'm going to change how the header works on every page. And I don't have to manually figure out how to do that, because I can just go in here and say, oh, yeah, here are the various templates, like what it looks like with a 404 or search results or, the blog home or things like that. Use a child theme if needed. We talked about that. So pop quiz, when do you need a child theme? The answer is when you're changing the code of your theme. Content versus style. Okay, so ideally speaking, you should be able to change the way that your site looks independently of changing the content itself. So if I go in here and say, this is my really cool website that I made about myself, ideally, I should be able to change how my site looks without the content changing. This picture is still here, this text is still here, but I'm just changing the way that it looks. right? And that's one of the advantages of using a block theme is you can do things like that. Whereas before, it used to be that if you change themes, you would have to redo a bunch of stuff. You would have to figure out, oh, well, this header is a setting somewhere in Customizer, and it's a different setting in this theme versus this other theme. So I got to go figure out how to do it in a new theme. And learning every theme was like learning WordPress all over again. Well, with block themes, it's less of an issue because, well, as long as your stuff is registered as styles, everyone's going to know how to use it if they learn this one tool. Um, so it's really nice when your content and your style are separate concerns. So you can change how something looks, you can change the content, and they don't necessarily mess with each other that well. In a perfect world, that's where that works. Um, so that's everything. We kind of stepped through a couple of things. It was understanding what WordPress themes are. It was factors to consider when you're picking a theme. It was exploring how to customize things, best practices for theme customizations. And that got us through basically all of this. So hopefully you get a sense now of how to choose a theme, where to get them, WordPress.org, how to customize them a little bit, how to get started, and how to use a little bit of the site editor and how to make changes there. But since we have a Q&A and we left some time for Q&A, Devin, do we have questions? I see questions have come in.
We do. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for that. That was super informative, super helpful. A lot of people have really liked that so far. I have aggregated a few questions, so we're going to just jump right into those.
Okay, I see
And
them.
okay, and hopefully we'll get through all of them. So
Okay, yeah, it's just in this Q&A section here. How do you, am I in the right spot? How do you ensure that a theme is compatible with the latest WordPress updates?
yep.
Okay. So yeah, first question, how do you ensure the theme is compatible with the latest WordPress updates? Well, the short answer is you can test it. But also, you theme authors can say that. Theme authors can say in here, hey, this has been when it was last updated and what versions of WordPress it was tested with. And so if you're worried that like, oh, well, if I update WordPress, is my theme going to break? You can kind of check it here to see that. Next question, how can I assess a theme's compatibility with the specific plugins I want to use? That's a good question. Ideally, that isn't too tricky to do when you can just try it out. That being said, if this is a site that you're still building and nobody's looking at it yet, that's really easy to do because you can just try it out. You can just try it and see what happens, see if it works, see if it doesn't work. But if this is a site that's already getting a lot of traffic, it's a good idea to look into staging. And what staging can do for you is it makes a copy of your website, and then you can mess around with the copy, and it's okay if the copy breaks because all you're doing is messing with the copy. You're not messing with the original. And then if you like it and if you like what you did and it seems to be working and everything seems okay, then yeah, go ahead and do it on the real site now. And you can delete the staging website and you can be confident that, hey, I've actually already tried this out. Staging is built into the Bluehost plugin, but there's also some really good plugins out there that you can get for staging that you can just search for in the plugins repo that will, have a different way of doing staging, different functionality. Some are better at some things, some are better at others. So find one that you like. That's really all that matters is that you're comfortable with it and you like it. But that's how I would do that is if it's a site you're still building, I would say just try it out, see if it works. If it's a site that's getting traffic that you don't want to just be making wild changes to, make a staging site and make those changes on the staging site. Next question.
Let's see. I had that pulled up. Next question is, can you provide some examples of popular plugins that help me with theme customizations?
Okay, yeah. It's a good one. The Bluehost plugin is one that actually comes with Wonder blocks. So the what I was showing you before with adding a post and stuff, and how that green button at the top that lets you add cool stuff, that's actually part of the Bluehost plugin. There's also a lot of really good block plugins out there. If you want to add more blocks that aren't in there, you would do that in the form of plugins. So if I go up here to plugins in WordPress.org, there's a lot of really cool block plugins that can do things. Cadence is really popular. Elementor is really popular, although that's a little bit more than just registering regular block editor blocks. It's like a whole thing. Um, the Gutenberg plugin is one that will kind of give you a preview of what's going to go into core into the future. But yeah, there's a lot of really good block plugins out there. Jetpack actually adds additional blocks, things like forms. They're really nice. So yeah, you can add additional ones that are that will do that. And if you just browse through popular plugins, a lot of these are going to register blocks for you.
Awesome. The next question we have, is there a limit to how much customization I can do without coding knowledge? I'm going to rephrase this and say, how easy is it to get my site into some trouble if I'm starting to jump in and do some customizations on my own?
Okay, I'll answer both of those questions. The first one, is there a limit? The only limit is your imagination and your time. It's mostly time. That's actually the real limit, is how much time do you have to figure it out. But the other question is, how easy is it to get into a state where you're like, oh no, I broke it. What did I do? Yeah, it's actually pretty easy to do that. But if you stick with the site editor, and you stick with style variations that are available with a theme, then you've got some kind of presets that work really nicely, where you've had some designer pick out, hey, these colors work nicely with this layout and these pictures and this font, that kind of thing. So if the more you change, more opportunities there are to be really creative and potentially make something that's unique, either good or bad. But if you want to stay on more the safe side of things, or if you're like, yeah, I tried some things and I didn't like it, just go into the site editor and pick one of these style variations that you do like, and start changing from there.
Yeah, and I think this kind of touches on one of the things that we at Bluehost really like about WordPress, and that's that you're only limited by your technical knowledge and by whatever your imagination allows you to bring up. I sometimes use the analogy, it's like building a piece of furniture, right? Like with some of this, it's like going out and chopping down whatever lumber you need and building it by hand. But with a lot of this, it's like going to IKEA and getting the pre-assembled things, and you can, depending on which route you take, you can get yourself into some trouble for sure in doing it incorrectly. But for the most part, you're only limited by your imagination and how much time you want to spend in making sure it looks like what you imagine in your mind. The next question I have on this list is, are there any costs associated with the tool that you mentioned or similar tools? And I think they were referring to WonderStart.
Oh yeah, I should have brought that up. If you're a Bluehost customer, you get it for free, which that's a pretty good deal.
That's a great deal.
Because normally stuff like that would run you a little bit of extra dollars, but we just include it because we figure if customers are more successful at building their sites, they're more likely to stick around. So if we can, we could sell WonderSuite, and I'm sure we'd make money off of it. But from a business strategy, we would much rather give it to all of our customers for free so that they're successful. And if we get a lot of people with very successful websites, they're going to stay our customers much longer. So it makes sense for us to do, and it helps out Bluehost customers too. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah, I think Bluehost also wants to position itself as a partner in the website building process. We recognize that on occasion it can be frustrating, it can be daunting, and so this is one extra thing that we can do to say, look, we're in this together. We want to be building this together, so let's try to make it a little bit easier, however we can. The next question we have here is, what's the best approach for testing changes?
Staging again. And it's I think that question probably came in before we talked about that. But yeah, the staging is really how I would do it. Unless it's such a small change that like it's pretty safe to just do and it's fine. But like if this is significant, if you're like completely changing themes and adding a bunch of stuff, I would use staging for it. Unless it's a site that doesn't really get traffic. If you're still setting it up and you're like, oh, nobody's looking at this but me anyway, go wild. Do whatever you want. You can always just reinstall WordPress if you need to.
I was just going to add one small piece to that, and that is, as you kind of again mentioned, staging is going to be the answer to a lot of the questions when it comes to themes, because it allows you to just make a carbon copy of your website in a traffic safe space, so no traffic will see it. You can go in there, you can break stuff, you can try new themes, new plugins, new whatever,
Yeah.
and if you like it, you can migrate it to your live site and have it start getting traffic. And if you don't like it, you can delete it. So it really is the best way to experiment and to test and to kind of play around with something without it having a real impact on your site that's getting traffic. The next question that we have is, how do you balance creativity with ensuring a consistent user experience when customizing a theme? That's a good question.
This is a really good question. Um, am I still sharing my screen? Can you see WordPress
Yes.
here?
Yep.
That's one of the reasons I really like the site editor, actually, is it lets you do things in a way that's kind of holistic to the site. So you can go in here and say, okay, I'm going to change the way this looks. And it'll change for the whole website, or it'll change for an individual page if you really want it to. But if the way that you change it is you start changing the templates instead of individual pages, then you're more likely to keep that kind of coherent thing where you're like, okay, yeah, so let me just change how the, how this first image shows up in all my pages, and it'll show up that way for all of my pages, not just the one. So it's kind of built into this that like, well, as long as you do it this way, it'll happen to everything at once, and you won't have to. Oh, how many pages do I have? Okay, I guess that's how many changes I have to make. Ugh, and it'll kind of just do it everywhere, and it's really nice. Sometimes, though, you do want to make a change only to one specific page, and if that's the case, that's when you have to start breaking out like custom CSS and say like, okay, just this page is going to change. So over here, the way that you do that is in the design panel here on the left, you've got styles and pages and templates. So styles, that's this thing where you can choose these presets. The pages is if you want to change something just once and not everywhere. And templates is where, hey, I want to change something and I want it to kind of change everywhere. So I'm going to change this 404 page that'll always happen. I'm going to change the every archive page or every page or every search result page, or you can change them all at the same time, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's super nice. The next question actually, I think, leads us directly into our next slide as well. And that's, can you recommend any additional resources for further learning about WordPress theme
These
customization?
ones. I don't know if it's, I don't know where it is, but wherever it is, these ones here.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we have professional services here. We have tech support that can help you with your account itself. We have a YouTube channel. We have webinars that are pretty good. And there's always support. You can call us up. But
Perfect.
in addition to that, there's also really good stuff online that you can just kind of search for what you need. But it depends on what you're looking for. Sometimes it's good to find someone like kind of a web expert person that you can turn to with questions about like, hey, I've got a tutorial, but the tutorial doesn't look like what I've got, and this isn't helpful. So sometimes it is really helpful to have somebody you can call up and just ask, and we can do some of that in Bluehost.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we are getting down to the last few questions. So we're going to go into the rapid fire round. I know we only have about 5 minutes left on the webinar. So,
Okay.
next question is, what are some theme recommendations, or what themes do you personally like?
Yith Wonder is a really good one. That's one that was developed by the same team at Bluehost that did a lot of the Wonder blocks and stuff. It's really good. Any of the ones starting with 20, any of the year ones are really good. Um, some of the popular ones are good as long as it doesn't require like a specific page builder. It's probably a really good theme. Um, but yeah, I've used Generate Press a lot. It's good. Here's Yeth Wonder, extremely popular. Um, yeah, so that's what I would say. Some of the 2020s are good. Storefront is good. Generate Press is good. Yeth Wonder is really good.
Awesome. And then only two more questions. How does a theme impact my site load speed?
It's one of the reasons to make sure you're on the latest version of everything is that kind of stuff gets better and faster. Um, and speed is a priority for WordPress. And so having a block theme doesn't necessarily guarantee your site is going to be faster, but generally speaking, block themes um, are quicker loading than heavy multi-purpose premium themes of 5 years ago. They work on newer versions of PHP, which run faster. They're lighter weight. There's less code to run them, and oftentimes they look really nice. So
Awesome.
use a block theme, and yeah, it should help. But yeah, it can definitely make a difference. Another reason to use a staging site is you can sometimes test that and say, hey, if I switch themes, does my site go faster?
Right. That's true. And in the open source community of WordPress, developers build these themes. So it's not very likely, but it is possible that some developers are better at making it a little bit more streamlined than others. So
Oh yeah, for sure.
factors to consider for sure. And then the last question that we'll end on is, how can I tell if my theme is a block theme? Maybe if you
Oh,
could describe what that means and how to tell. That'd be
yeah,
the
good
perfect
question.
way to end.
If you've got this edit site here, um, it's a block theme. So if you click on that and you've got this cool tool here that you can use, if your only options are like the customizer, then it's not new. You can also look on WordPress.org and see if it says, um, block editor styles are one of the things that are in here. You can look for that. But yeah, if it's a new recent theme that has a lot of support, they'll probably say somewhere in here. But yeah, you can look for block editor styles. You can install it and see if the site editor works with it. Um, yeah.
And I think if you click on that tag that you were highlighting earlier, I think it will sort by block editor styles. So those are a
Yeah.
bunch of themes that include that in there.
Well, and you can also just click on this.
There you
There's
go.
one specifically for um, full site editing
Perfect.
is what this is filtering by.
All right. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much for stopping by. Really appreciate it. And I meant to mention earlier, if there is a topic in the WordPress building journey that you would like us to cover in a webinar, please drop it in the chat now. We're always open to learning how we can help you. We want these to be educational. We want them to be engaging for you. So if there's a particular part of the website building process that you're getting tripped up on, or you could use a little bit of hand holding as we walk you through the process, let us know. We want to be here as a resource and as a partner in your website building journey. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Chris, for stopping by and sharing your knowledge. Really, really appreciate it. And we will talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.